Hi, my name is Jack Rosinski and I make videos on the internet. Over the past few months, I've been making rewrites of the Star Wars prequel trilogy in order to make it a more complete and satisfying story. As you can probably see, this is my rewrite for episode 3, so you're probably going to want to go back and watch the ones for episodes 1 and 2. I promise they're really good. You don't have to watch them. If you like being confused, good for you. We don't kink shame on this channel. In case you don't want to click away, here is an incredibly quick recap.
So Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan met on a gladiatorial planet called Karnak in the act of trying to get Anakin off of that planet. Karnak is also the same planet where Qui-Gon Jinn was killed by Darth Maul before he got the chance to tell Anakin that he is his father. Also important to note, the act of taking Anakin off of Karnak is what started the Clone Wars. 3 years later, Anakin is Obi-Wan's Padawan, and he's also romantically involved with Padme when they discover a dangerous conspiracy involving the Republic's clone army. Anakin at this time is also growing close with High Counselor Palpatine, while Obi-Wan deals with a growing darkness within himself. They eventually uncover the conspiracy and the entire clone army is rehauled, but that also puts it right in the hands of High Counselor Palpatine, aka Darth Motherfucking Sidious. Obi-Wan can tell that something fishy is going on in the Republic, so he goes away with Owen, Lars, and C-3PO to figure it out, while Anakin gets to work building a crib because Padme is preggers.
Okay, now that you're all caught up, let's just jump right into episode 3. This rewrite was both the hardest and the easiest one that I've had to make yet. It's the hardest because I genuinely think Revenge of the Sith is okay. It's not great or anything, but I definitely wouldn't call it bad. And that makes me want to keep a lot of the elements from the original movie, but have to fit them into my rewrite. But it's also the easiest because I've had this movie mapped out for quite a while. You're not supposed to do this as a writer, but I actually worked backwards from my ideas for episode 3 in order to make Dawn of Skywalker and the Clone Conspiracy, so I've had an idea of what I've wanted to happen in this movie for quite some time. So, what are we changing? Well, for one, the twins are already alive, so their presence is bound to shake things up. Also, we're going to be changing Anakin's motivations quite a bit. He's not going to become Space Hitler just because of a vision. Anakin's fall is the culmination of a years-long plan from Palpatine and a lifetime of abandonment on the side of Anakin. Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, or what's left of it, will also play a huge role in this film. But that's enough preamble. Let's just Philip DeFranco and jump right into my episode 3 rewrite titled... Okay, one more thing. I had a lot of trouble titling this rewrite. The original one I went with was Rise of the Empire, but then I went back and I looked at a lot of the titles of the other rewrites that I'm making, and I realized I had a lot of blank of the blank titles, and I wanted to shake things up. So I did some thinking, and I came up with a lot of options, including The Final Fall, Battle of Brothers, The Fall of the Light, The Battle for Light, The Lost Light, and Death of the Light. All awful titles, and apparently I had something against light while I was writing them. But I really hunkered down and actually researched how to write titles, and I finally came up with something that I genuinely liked. So, here it is. In a nice callback to Return of the Jedi, we're gonna open this film on Tatooine with the culmination of Owen and Obi-Wan's 2-year search for answers. But we've seen a lot of Tatooine in Star Wars, so let's shake it up. I keep saying that. I think I've said shake it up a bit like 4 times already. I'm keeping it in, I don't give a shit, but I think it's kind of funny. Must have Zendaya on the brain. The two men are cloaked and walking through the vast desert holding radar devices that are pointed at the sand. They are looking for something. Owen remarks how Tatooine would be the perfect planet to get lost on, and Obi-Wan agrees as his device lights up. He raises his hand to the sand and uses the Force to push it away, revealing a manhole-like door. He and Owen open it and climb down into the underground commune known as Bazik's Hole. Bazik's Hole is a massive underground compound where thousands of species live together away from the hot dual suns of Tatooine. Everything here is vertical rather than horizontal, and the deeper you go into Bazik's Hole, the more illicit the markets become. This will give us a chance to show off some cool new alien species and a bunch of really awesome practical effects. As the duo continues deeper into the compound, they meet up with C-3PO, who has been in Bazik's Hole for some time gathering information for them. He lets them know that they're looking for a rat-like alien named Arduk, who is rumored to have passed messages between Palpatine and the Separatists. While they are looking for Arduk, we get a chance to catch up with Obi-Wan and Owen. The two have grown pretty close over the 2 years they've spent together, but they've been so mission-based that they don't have the same banter that Obi-Wan has with Anakin. Owen asks Obi-Wan if he's excited to return to the Jedi Order once their mission is completed, and Obi-Wan isn't so sure. Owen explains that Obi-Wan has spent all the free time they've had meditating, and that he's confident Obi-Wan has his dark side in check. Kenobi thanks Owen for his support, but says that the Jedi Order isn't really something he wants to go back to now that he knows how corrupt the galaxy actually is. Before they can continue their conversation, however, Obi-Wan spots Arduk and a chase breaks out. The rat alien fires a blaster at Obi-Wan, but he blocks it with his lightsaber. A fun vertical chase scene ensues, with our heroes jumping from platform to platform trying to keep up with their target. Eventually, Obi-Wan is able to tackle Arduk, and the rat just immediately breaks. He offers to give them whatever they want as long as they promise not to hurt him, and Obi-Wan asks for the message that he's carrying. Arduk hands over a small black pyramid and scurries away. They bring the device to 3PO, who opens it for them, and a small hologram of a cloaked Sidious plays from it. The message was clearly meant for General Grievous because Sidious is asking him to hold out just a little bit longer. At the end of the message, Sidious removes his hood and reveals that he's actually Jar Jar. Just kidding. We all know Jar Jar is Snoke. But now Snoke is Palpatine. So I guess that means Jar Jar is also Palpatine. Huh. Well, he removes his cloak and reveals that he's Palpatine. I know, shocking. Obi-Wan is shocked to learn this information, though. He suspected that the High Counselor may be corrupt and working both sides, but not a Sith Lord. Owen doesn't fully understand what's so much worse about this, but Obi-Wan is distraught, especially for Anakin. He knows how close Skywalker was getting with Palpatine before he left, and now he's terrified. Owen reminds Obi-Wan that Anakin hasn't responded to any of his messages in over a year, but that doesn't deter Kenobi. They agree that bringing this message to the Republic could get it buried, so they have to give it directly to the Jedi Council. Owen agrees to stay on Tatooine with a hard copy of the evidence, while Obi-Wan and 3PO go to Coruscant with a copy, you know what I mean, they have another version of the message. When Obi-Wan and 3PO make it back to their ship, they find another message for them. This one, however, is from Padme. She tells Obi-Wan about changes in Anakin's behavior that are concerning her, that he barely ever spends time with the kids and he's always out fighting the war. How almost every time that they're together, they fight about her pressuring the Senate to make peace with the Separatists, and how concerned she is about how much time he's spending with Palpatine. She believes that Obi-Wan may be the only person that could bring back the Anakin that she loves, and urges him to join them for dinner on Alderaan. Now, I could end this message with her saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," but that would be incredibly cheesy. But the thing you're forgetting is that I'm the Leaning Tower of Cheesa.
It's the Leaning Tower of Cheesa.
So she obviously says that. Obi-Wan tells 3PO that they're taking a detour on their way to Coruscant, and they head off to Alderaan. But before our happy reunion, let's check in with Anakin. Pre-Vader is on a Republic cruiser standing in front of a window looking down on Kashyyyk. From off-screen, we hear Mace Windu yell, "Skywalker!" and Anakin responds, "That's General Skywalker to you, Master Windu." Mace is upset that Anakin pushed forward the date of their invasion of Kashyyyk because he doesn't believe the Wookiee forces are ready, and also he wanted to give the Senate more time to make peace. They've recently arrested Jabba the Hutt, and now they believe they could end this war without any more bloodshed. Anakin does not carry the same hopes, however, and believes they have to strike before their enemy can get a hold on the planet. He also informs Mace that the High Counselor has already approved the decision and that he has last say on all war strategies. After a tense stare down, Mace leaves the room in a huff. In the last 2 years, Anakin has changed a lot. The boyish charm he radiated in episodes 1 and 2 has been replaced by smug arrogance. Even his body language has changed. Gone are the slightly slouched shoulders and humble smile, now replaced with an upturned grin and hands crossed behind his back. He almost appears like a young Tarkin. I know that's not how Vader stood, but I feel like it would be if not for, the almost total loss of his limbs. We wipe to another room where Anakin is talking to a hologram of Palpatine and updating him on their progress. He tells his future master about Mace's outburst, and Palpatine responds that Jedi will always believe their way is right because they are blinded by their rules. Anakin is much more accepting of slander towards his comrades now, but he doesn't verbally agree with the High Counselor just yet. Palpatine ends the message by saying that the closer they get to the end of the Clone Wars, the closer they get to implementing all the policies they've talked about. The sooner the Clone Wars end, the sooner they could get to work saving the galaxy. Palpatine disappears and Anakin answers a call from Padme, who informs him that Obi-Wan will be joining them for dinner tomorrow. Anakin initially scoffs and says that he can't take a break right now with the end of the war so close. But Padme says that she wants to show him something that might convince him to come. She returns with a 1-year-old Leia in her arms and asks the little girl to say what she said earlier. The child sputters out "Dada," and a smile breaks out across Anakin's face. Padme assures him that Luke is also trying to talk, he's just a little bit behind. Anakin agrees to come to dinner, but he also says that he'll be leaving the same day he arrives. Cut to Alderaan, where Padme is talking to a large group of her people about how important it is to end the war peacefully. She has not missed a step since giving birth, still leading the charge against Palpatine's agenda, even though her partner supports it. Quick note, because I don't think I've mentioned it yet, Anakin and Padme aren't married, because I don't see why marriage would be a thing in this universe. It doesn't seem to make any sense. They're just kind of together. I always thought it was weird that at the end of episode 2 there's like a wedding ceremony and a priest. Like, does that imply that Naboo has the same marriage rights as Earth? Like, I guess they speak the same language and basically all look the same and, dress the same, and everything else about their society is based on Earth, but I don't really care. The only space Jesus in this galaxy should be Ewan McGregor. Padme sees Obi-Wan walk into the back of the lecture hall and they smile at each other. They walk home after her speech and we get a good look at the idyllic life on Alderaan. Obi-Wan never thought that Padme would come back here, that she was too ambitious to ever return home. Padme says that when they met that was true, but that she didn't want to raise Luke and Leia around the chaos of Coruscant. When they make it back to her home, Padme introduces the twins to their uncle Obi-Wan. He holds them both together and a strange look falls across his face. Padme says that Anakin had the exact same look the first time he held them together. Obi-Wan tells Padme that Luke and Leia are individually very strong with the Force, but together, they are more than anything he has ever seen. Padme sighs and says that that is another reason she's raising them on Alderaan, as far away as possible from the Jedi Council. Just then, Anakin's ship is heard outside. Obi-Wan walks out and sees his best friend exit the vehicle. They walk towards each other with a tension unseen in their relationship since they met on Karnak. But after a moment, smiles break across their faces and they pull each other into a warm embrace. Anakin asks Obi-Wan what he's found, which surprises Kenobi because he never told Anakin that he was looking into Palpatine. But after a second, Anakin clarifies that he meant, what have you found within yourself, because he can sense that Obi-Wan is more at peace now than he was when he left. Obi-Wan says that it is a very long story, and Anakin wants him to tell it over dinner, between stories of his great successes, of course. Obi-Wan jokes that he can only imagine what Anakin got up to while he was away. Anakin greets Padme with the kind of kiss that you give your great aunt. There is clearly tension in their relationship, but still love in their eyes. He runs into the house, grabs the twins, and spins them around, and they all fall on the ground, playing together. Obi-Wan looks into the house and smiles seeing his friends so happy, and runs in to join them. Now I know what you're thinking. If Anakin even spent this much time with his kids and loved them so much, how did he forget that Leia existed in Return of the Jedi? Cause he's definitely surprised by what he finds in Luke's head, right? Well, not to tease you, but we're gonna cover all of that later. I just thought it was very important to show how much love Anakin is capable of, especially for his kids. That way, his turn in episode 6 makes even more sense. Not to mention, the happier he is in Act 1, the more tragic Act 3 will be. We are in real calm before the storm territory here. Later that night, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme are eating dinner on their balcony. Let's give them some weird space food or something. I don't know why, but it feels like the weirdest Star Wars was willing to go with food was blue milk, and I want more. Anakin is telling stories of the war and mostly addressing Obi-Wan. Padme's frustration with the topic is clear, and even Kenobi can see it. Anakin is very proud of what he's done and speaks very highly of the High Counselor. Obi-Wan puts on a smile, but his worry continues to grow. Eventually, they are joined by Bail and Breha Organa, turning the conversation into Padme's favor. Bail is an even stronger opponent of Palpatine than Padme is, and his appearance immediately kills Anakin's mood. After a few moments, an argument breaks out between Anakin and Bail over Palpatine's handling of the war. Anakin says that the High Counselor wants to end the war decidedly so that the Republic can start picking up the pieces immediately without having to dilly-dally with peace treaties and territories. Bail says that that is what all fascists claim before taking control. Anakin leaves the balcony in a huff and Obi-Wan goes after him. That is the second time I've used the phrase in a huff. Thank you for reminding me of my lack of creativity, Tim. You are an asshole, but I love you. The Jedi talk, looking into Luke and Leia's room as they are sleeping. Anakin confesses that all he wants to do is build a better galaxy for them, so they don't have to face what he faced as a child. Obi-Wan asks if Palpatine is really the best course to get there. Annie abruptly turns and asks Obi-Wan if he's on their side. Obi-Wan contemplates telling Anakin everything that he's learned, but decides not to. He says that he just wants what's best. Annie smiles and says that Obi-Wan hasn't changed a bit, and also mentions that he wants Obi-Wan to join him with leading the invasion of Kashyyyk. Obi-Wan isn't sure if he's ready for that yet, but Anakin goads him into it. The duo that started this war are going to be the ones who end it. Skywalker is very happy to have his best friend at his side again, but Kenobi's worry just continues to grow. The next morning, before Anakin and Obi-Wan go to join the fleet, Padme talks to Kenobi. She confronts him about going with Anakin into the war when he hasn't been a part of it for years. Obi-Wan says that she asked him to save Anakin, and that is exactly what he's trying to do. He pulls her to the side and explains everything that he found on Tatooine. Padme is shocked and wants to tell Annie right away, but Kenobi stops her, saying that he needs to break through to Anakin first. Find the man that he found on Karnak before he can trust him with this information. They hug, and he takes off with Anakin. And that was the last time that Obi-Wan saw Padme alive. On Kashyyyk, which I've recently discovered is frustratingly spelled with 3 Y's, General Grievous is not having the best time. We watch as he orders around droids and tries to calm down the remaining Separatist leaders who are panicking about Jabba's arrest. One of them raises their voice at him and gets slashed in half by a lightsaber for it. He orders them all back to their homeworld so they can prepare for the worst. Just then, a transmission comes in from Sidious and Grievous begs him to send more troops. Sidious denies this request and says that Grievous's usefulness has become depleted. If the android manages to survive the coming conflict, he'll find a place for him in his new empire, but the Force is telling him that he is about to die. Sidious disappears, and Grievous screams in rage. In the space around the planet, Obi-Wan and Anakin land their ships on a Republic starcruiser. There, Obi-Wan has a short reunion with Rex, who has officially been promoted to captain as Anakin's right-hand man. Then, they meet up with a large group of Jedi, including Mace Windu, Yoda, and a bunch of the other faces we've come to know. Obi-Wan has another short reunion with them and comments about never expecting to see Yoda on a Republic cruiser. Yoda explains that the Force guided him here to witness what is about to take place. Anakin responds that the only thing taking place will be the destruction of the Separatists. Now we get to have a fun little battle strategy scene where Anakin and Mace Windu try to explain what's going to happen the next day. The two Jedi slightly butt heads as they both try to take control of the briefing. More or less, the plan is that while a massive space battle occurs in the atmosphere, Obi-Wan and Anakin will lead the ground forces into Grievous's compound and preferably capture him alive. Except when I said all that, imagine there's like cool holograms and stuff, you know, to make it like fancy and shit. After the briefing, Kenobi shows Mace what he found on Tatooine. Mace agrees to deal with it himself as soon as the battle is won because he doesn't trust anybody else. He also makes Obi-Wan agree to not tell Anakin until Palpatine is in custody because he fears how he may react. The next day, Anakin and Obi-Wan are preparing their ships for the coming battle. They bicker and banter like they used to, and they are both clearly happy to be back in each other's presence. This is one of the last happy moments we'll have with them, so we need to savor it. Okay, so this next battle is gonna be absolutely epic. Not only is it the conclusion of the Clone Wars, but it's also the turning point in this movie. It's gotta be huge and epic and everything you would want to see in a movie as climactic as this. And preferably, I'd like to do it all in one take. Or, you know, like try to make it look like one take, because I'm pretty sure filming in space over a giant jungle planet would be pretty hard. The battle is broken into 3 sections: space, ground, and lightsaber. Obi-Wan and Anakin take off from a Republic cruiser into a massive space battle taking place between the Republic and Separatist forces. Their goal is to get to the planet's surface, so they're not really engaging with the Separatist drones unless they absolutely have to. But we can show Obi-Wan peel off to save some clone troopers while Anakin just dives ahead to show how much he's changed. Once they're in the Kashyyyk atmosphere, a drone will destroy one of Obi-Wan's engines, and he'll have to eject from his ship and ride to the surface on Anakin's, because it'll look fucking cool with like his hair and everything blowing in the wind. On the ground, they'll join up with the Wookiee and clone forces who have surrounded the Separatist island compound. They'll charge at it Normandy style, and here we get to see Obi-Wan and Anakin at full strength. They're working in tandem to take out as many droids as possible, jumping onto the larger ones, force jumping off of each other, just some real top-tier Jedi shit. When they finally make it to the compound, Obi-Wan thinks they should come up with a strategy, but Anakin prefers to just charge right in. They find Grievous in a large room, alone, as if he was waiting for them. Episode 3 Grievous doesn't have the unhinged joy of Episode 2 Grievous. He's more sullen and somehow scarier. Anakin taunts the android, but it's as if he didn't hear it. He mutters something about Anakin being in his way and needing to prove himself. The Jedi ignite their lightsabers and saying that it being 2-on-1, he might as well surrender. Grievous unveils his 2 extra arms, ignites 4 lightsabers, and they get to work. This lightsaber duel is a mix of intense and fun. The one in Revenge of the Sith is way too goofy to be taken seriously, so there's no giant iguanas and big wheels in this one. But this is the last time that we'll see Obi-Wan and Anakin fight side by side, so there has to be a sort of ominous joy to it. After a lengthy fight that leads them outside into the ongoing battle, Anakin and Obi-Wan are finally able to incapacitate Grievous. But before Obi-Wan can even celebrate, Anakin viciously slices Grievous down the middle from head to groin. Obi-Wan is shocked and asks Anakin what he's doing. Anakin responds, "I'm ending the war." The Wookiees and the clones continue to push back the rest of the droid forces as the rest of the Jedi join Obi-Wan and Anakin on the ground. Mace Windu tries to congratulate Anakin on a mission accomplished, but Anakin just ignores him. Obi-Wan asks Mace if Palpatine's arrest is moving forward, and Windu tells him that he's heading to Coruscant right now to handle it. Obi-Wan wishes him good luck, and Yoda looks on with a grave look on his face. Now we get the first of many soul-crushing scenes in this film. Obi-Wan desperately trying to pull Anakin back from the edge. He asks his friend what he's going to do now that the war is over. Anakin responds that he and Palpatine have great plans to implement policies that will strengthen the Republic away from the Senate so that people like Jabba the Hutt cannot ruin lives. When he sees that Obi-Wan isn't reacting positively to this, his whole demeanor changes. Suddenly, Obi-Wan is just another Jedi. Obi-Wan tries to tell Anakin that what he's describing is fascism and that it will only lead to more suffering. Anakin says that of course Obi-Wan would feel that way with him having lived his whole life in the Jedi Order. He says that real suffering happens when evil is given too much freedom. Evil fears the strength of good men. Obi-Wan says that, "Is Palpatine a good man, Anakin?" And Anakin responds, "He's the best man I've ever known." Obi-Wan suddenly shouts, "He's a Sith Lord, Anakin!" It just slipped out. The big secret. Anakin is shocked. He stammers, no, he can't be. Obi-Wan shows him the evidence, but Anakin can't look at it directly. He asks Kenobi how long he's known, and demands to know why he didn't tell him sooner. We see Anakin's heart break as Obi-Wan says that he couldn't trust him with this information before the plan was in motion. This trips Anakin into anger. He can't believe that the Jedi would arrest the High Counselor. Obi-Wan says, "He's a Sith, Anakin. He needs to be stopped." And Anakin asks, why? What makes the Sith so much worse than the Jedi? The Jedi have been in power for millennia, and still billions suffer. What has changed? What have they done? Maybe the galaxy needs a Sith. Now we get to see Obi-Wan's heart break, as he realizes that his friend is truly lost. He says that if Anakin can't tell the difference between a Sith and a Jedi, then there is nothing more he can do for him. Anakin runs to his ship and screams at Kenobi not to follow him. As soon as he takes off, Obi-Wan heads to his ship, but is stopped by Yoda. Yoda tells him that Anakin is walking the path of his destiny and that he must not be interrupted. A moment of realization strikes Obi-Wan. He realizes that Yoda has known this whole time what was going to happen, and didn't do anything. He demands to know why the Jedi Master didn't step in and try to bring Anakin back to the light. Yoda simply responds that he is following the current of the Force, which always drifts towards the light. This infuriates Obi-Wan, who runs off to warn Mace. A lot just happened right there, so let's unpack some of it. Like I said, I wanted to ground Anakin's fall to the dark side in this movie. The original prequel trilogy failed to explain how a former slave could somehow become a space fascist, but I hope you can see how it happened here. Anakin has been convinced over time by Palpatine that the only way to prevent the suffering he lived with is by controlling as many people as possible. It doesn't matter if that's true, it's what Anakin has been led to believe. We know from Dawn of Skywalker and the Clone Conspiracy that this Anakin cares more about saving people than anything else, and Palpatine has given him a clear path to do that, even if it's totally wrong. A very important note to make is that even by the end of this film, we won't have a Vader who would be okay with destroying an entire planet. That is a gradual change that will occur as he dives deeper and deeper into the dark side and fascism. Another thing I really quickly wanted to talk about is Yoda. I mentioned before that I was going to make my Yoda a pacifist, but I never said exactly what I wanted to do with him. My Yoda is a toxic pacifist, or as much of a toxic pacifist as he can possibly be while also being a green little muppet. He only does what he believes the Force is willing him to do, which is why he stopped Obi-Wan's lightsaber in Episode 2, but didn't stop Anakin from going after Maul. who, by the way, I've recently learned either was named Gabriel at birth or eventually changed his name to Gabriel. Yes, Darth Maul's name is Gabe. Gabe Maul. Do with that what you will. Going back to Yoda, I wanted a more complicated character whose exile would make more sense. Someone who actually made real-world mistakes in the Clone Wars that led him to where he was. I want all of the characters in the prequels to have made very real mistakes that led to the Empire. And don't worry, his whole worldview will bite him in the little green ass coming up. Wiped to Anakin in hyperspace with the most conflicted look possible stretched across his face. That look is broken by Padme, who calls him, telling him that the twins have become terribly sick and that she needs him to come back to Alderaan immediately. Anakin hesitates for a second, but he turns the ship around as much as you can in hyperspace and heads to Alderaan. But we are still heading to Coruscant, where Palpatine in his office is joined by Mace Windu and 4 other Jedi. The scene starts out very similar to the one in Revenge of the Sith. Mace and Palpatine have a little bit of banter, and eventually he tells him that the High Counselor is under arrest. But in this version, Sheev doesn't resist. He argues for a second, but ends up going with them. Arshiv isn't physically powerful. His power comes from being able to manipulate and pull strings and shoot lightning out of his hands, which we'll get to. He shouldn't be able to take out 5 highly trained Jedi on his own when he's a fucking geriatric. Not to be ageist, but I'm just saying, he's not taking out fucking Kit Fisto. Have you seen Kit Fisto? Man's jacked. You're not taking that motherfucker out. You're not taking out goddamn Nick Fury. You're not taking out the guy from Jurassic Park. You're not taking out the guy from Pulp Fiction. They're all the same person. I don't care. That geriatric-ass motherfucker isn't beating him in a fight. He knows that he needs Anakin firmly on his side to complete his plans, and he doesn't have that yet. But as he's being led away, he does signal to his assistant to let the press know that the incredibly popular High Counselor has recently been arrested by the Jedi. Moving over to Alderaan, Anakin bursts into he and Padme's home and confronts his lover on the couch. She tells him that the twins just passed out and that they're being seen to by a medical droid right now. But as Padme talks, Anakin's face slowly drops. He realizes that she's lying to him, that the kids aren't even there. He stands and backs away from her. The last straw has been broken. You're working with them to distract me, he says. The twins, they're not even here. I can't feel them. Padme tries to explain that Mace asked her to do this so they could get Palpatine in custody. That if he would just listen to her, she could explain how this is something that has to happen. But it doesn't matter to Anakin. This is all just another abandonment in his eyes. She approaches him, arms out, trying to convince him that she's right, but he force pushes her across the room, knocking her unconscious. He walks back to his ship with tears brimming in his eyes. Next, we have a very quick scene on Kashyyyk of Obi-Wan getting into his ship even with Yoda protesting it, and then Padme waking up on Alderaan and asking someone to take her to Coruscant. But now, for the real beginning of the end. Palpatine sits in a ray-shielded cell guarded by 2 Jedi. A small smile crosses over his lips as his 2 guards slam into each other and Anakin appears on the other side of the shield. Palpatine says that he knew Anakin would come for him, that he would never believe the lies the Jedi are saying. But as the shield comes down, Anakin's lightsaber ignites, pointed at Sheev. He tells him that he knows he's a Sith Lord and demands to know why he kept it from him. Palpatine is genuinely nervous about the power radiating from Anakin, but he does not lie. He says that being a Sith is a taboo in the Republic and that he needed to know Anakin would understand before he came clean. But Anakin just pushes the lightsaber closer to his chin, feeling abandoned yet again. Sheev asks Anakin if he knows the true difference between the Sith and the Jedi. The Sith aren't afraid of using their power like the Jedi are. and the Force rewards them for this approach by giving them more power through the dark side. He says, you see, the Jedi use the Force to keep balance, but the Sith use the Force to keep order, to fix what's broken and make it better. As Sheev explains, Anakin slowly lowers his lightsaber. Palpatine finishes off by saying that Anakin once told him that he became a Jedi to help people, but what he really needed to become was a Sith. Anakin falls to his knees as the voices of everyone who's loved and abandoned him ring in his ears, but those voices slowly change to that of Palpatine and a familiar, heavy breathing. Sheev reminds him that all the people he's thinking of right now left him, and that he is the only one who never left his corner, that he's the only one who's been there the whole time. Skywalker looks up at his mentor and asks how he can become a Sith. Sheev says that to become a Sith, he needs to destroy everything that tied him to Anakin Skywalker. And he says that he's not sure that he can do that, but Sheev reminds him that those people that he needs to destroy, they're not here right now, are they? After a moment of contemplation, Anakin rises and asks his new master what they need to do first. But before he can respond, Mace Windu calls out to them from outside the cell with 4 other Jedi, all wielding lightsabers. He says that he always knew one day Anakin would betray them, and Anakin says, like you convinced Padme to betray me? Mace scolds Anakin for even having attachments that he could manipulate and throws in that Padme was more than willing to help. In a rage, Anakin lunges at the Jedi, lightsaber ignited. 2 of the Jedi attempt to recapture Palpatine while Mace and the others take on Anakin. Palpatine doesn't whip out a lightsaber because it would be incredibly goofy to watch an old man in a lightsaber duel, but he's able to hold off the Jedi with Force lightning. Anakin, on the other hand, is back to the brutal gladiatorial warrior we saw on Karnak. Even with the 3-on-1 advantage that the Jedi have, it's clear that Anakin is the strongest one there. Soon, it's 2-on-1. And then it's just Windu versus Skywalker. This duel is the epic battle that a character like Mace Windu deserves as he and Anakin leap from the different levels of the prison. Palpatine fries the 2 Jedi that were going after him and sees Anakin struggling with Mace. He fires lightning at him, giving Mace the most badass moment where with one hand he's holding back Palpatine's Force lightning while the other crosses lightsabers with Anakin. But even he can only hold that out for so long. Anakin kicks out his legs and the Force lightning strikes him in the face, burning him. Sprawled out on the floor, Mace asks Anakin not to belittle him by asking for surrender. Anakin obliges and strikes him through the heart. We pause for a second as Anakin readjusts to his new reality where he kills Jedi. But when Palpatine asks if he's ready to move forward, he says yes. Wipe to Palpatine's office where Anakin and his new master burst in only to find Padme standing there, waiting for them. Sheev steps back and tells Anakin to do what he must. Padme pleads with her lover, saying that all she wants is the safety of her family and she doesn't care how that has to happen. A glint of hope shines in Anakin's eyes. Maybe he won't have to kill the woman he loves. They get closer as Padme continues to cry and she rests her head on Annie's chest. As he starts to put his arms around her though, he feels his lightsaber removed from its holster. Padme ignites it and swings wildly, chopping off Anakin's non-robotic hand. Anakin reels back in pain as Padme points the blade at him and Palpatine, clutching the hilt with shaking hands. Palpatine simply says Anakin's name, reminding him what he must do. Anakin composes himself and force pulls the lightsaber from Padme's hand with ease. She starts throwing things at him from Palpatine's desk, but he holds her in a force choke. Tears streaming down his face, he demands to know where his children are. He pulls Padme in close and says that if she tells him, he won't kill her. He's earnest here. He doesn't want to kill Padme. But just as strong as her daughter will one day grow to be, Padme refuses to give up her kids. So Anakin lifts her high in the air, closes his eyes, and squeezes the last breath out of her lungs. I think this death suits the mother of Princess Leia way more than what she got in Revenge of the Sith. Here, she dies defending something, and she gets to both metaphorically and physically take something of Anakin with her when she goes. Our Padme gets to go out like a hero, rather than from sadness. Yeah, that's actually what they went with. As Anakin cries over the body of his lost love, Palpatine rests a hand on his shoulder. He says that the process of becoming a Sith is meant to be painful and that there is only more to come. He leaves Anakin's side and heads over to the holographic projector and speaks those famous words.
Execute Order 66.
We get a montage of Jedi being slaughtered very similar to the one in Revenge of the Sith, but our focus is on Kashyyyk. There were dozens of Jedi on that planet cleaning up after Grievous, and we see them fight for their lives as the clones who they just served alongside suddenly turn on them. But most importantly, we see the horror in Yoda's eyes as his brethren and pupils are absolutely slaughtered all around him, as he realizes the Force might not be on his side here. He pulls in as much power as he can and releases it in a wave of energy, knocking down all of the clones in his vicinity. But he can do nothing but hide as the clone starfighters begin firebombing the battlefield. Back on Coruscant, Palpatine tells Anakin to go find his children on Alderaan because he believes they will be important. Anakin says, "Yes, Master," and then departs. Palpatine then starts another message, but this one is going out to the entire galaxy. He tells the people of the galaxy that he will be instructing the Senate to reform the Republic into a galactic empire to stop another conflict like the Clone Wars from breaking out. He tells them how the Jedi tried to take control because they believed he was a weak leader, but he has proven them wrong. We finally get back to Obi-Wan, who is just making it to Coruscant as Palpatine's message goes out. He looks up in horror at the High Counselor telling the entire galaxy that Jedi are now enemies of the state who should be treated with extreme prejudice. Several citizens notice Obi-Wan as this message is going out and try to gang up on him. He is forced to pull out his lightsaber to keep them back, but the fact that they would come after him at all is enough to scare him. Obi-Wan makes his way to the High Counselor's office where he finds the dead body of Padme. As he breaks down in front of her, much like Anakin before him, the wave of death from Order 66 washes over him. We see shots of Yoda trying to protect his fellow Jedi and failing. Shots of Anakin, eyes still red with tears, looking down on Alderaan from a Republic cruiser. From Palpatine's office, Obi-Wan can see legions of clone troopers marching up the steps of the Jedi Temple. He lifts up Padme's body and races out of the room. He gives her body to C-3PO and makes his way to the Jedi Temple. But by the time he gets there, it is already in flames. He tries his best to save as many younglings as he possibly can, but he only gets a few out before being overwhelmed by clones. He gets them back to his ship and takes off, leaving Coruscant behind. On Kashyyyk, Yoda is cornered by a group of clones, but is saved by Wookiees and led into the safety of the forest. Finally, on Alderaan, Anakin leads a legion of clones into the city and takes back his children from the daycare where Padme was hiding them. Bail Organa looks down in fear and disgust as Anakin walks away holding the crying twins. So, the big elephant in the room. I didn't make Anakin a child murderer in my version. I hope that's not too big of an issue for everybody.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I just thought it was kind of a pretty big jump for Anakin to just fall to the dark side and then immediately slaughter children without remorse. I know he kills kids in episode 2, but that was out of rage for his mother's death. Not like that justifies anything. While our Anakin has definitively fallen to the dark side by now, he's still only in the shallow end. Anakin meets with Palpatine on the Republic cruiser that I might as well just start calling a Star Destroyer now. Sidious tries to coddle the twins, but they recoil and start crying again. Anakin hands them off to Rex and tells him to protect them with his life. He asks Sheev what they must do next, and his master replies that they must finish his turn to the Sith by destroying his source of grief and his last tie to Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin asks him how they're going to do that, and Palpatine replies, by freeing Karnak. Oh, and by the way, Anakin has like a new robotic hand, so he's got like two, I don't know when he got it, but he got it, so he's got 2 robo hands now. Over on Kenobi's ship, 3PO does his best to take care of the younglings that Obi-Wan managed to get off Coruscant. At the same time, Kenobi has a conversation with Yoda over hologram. Yoda is deeply ridden with guilt and apologizes for the part he played in all of this. Obi-Wan doesn't forgive him, but says there's no time to assign blame now. Yoda agrees and says that the most important thing they can do now is to save the Skywalker children. Kenobi is confused, but Yoda believes that they are the key to saving the galaxy in the future. Kenobi is furious by this. Yoda is still stuck thinking about the future instead of trying to save the galaxy right now. He still thinks, deep down, that his friend can be saved and that all of this can be reversed. Yoda says, either way, they need to find Anakin and the twins. He says that if Kenobi just searches his feelings, he'll know where Anakin is going next. He leaves saying that this is likely the last time they'll speak for quite a long time, and wishes that the Force be with him in the next steps of his journey. Obi-Wan immediately shifts into meditation mode to find Anakin. Images of a burning Alderaan and dying Jedi invade his mind, but after a moment, they all align on Karnak. He sets a course and puts a call out to Owen on Tatooine, saying that he'll need his help. Wipe to Karnak, where a call is going out across the whole moon. Anakin tells the ruling class that their time is over and that in an hour, the moon will be raised. Everyone must clear away before then. We see people poor and rich alike panicking to get off the planet. Imperial ships land to get as many citizens off before everything is destroyed. Massive public ships are overloaded with people trying to get off the moon. Anakin may believe that what he's doing here is right, but he is clearly doing more harm than good. After a while, Rex comes up to Anakin and tells him that the moon has been cleared. Anakin responds, then rain fire. Several Imperial cruisers fire massive blasts of energy, absolutely decimating the surface of Karnak. The gladiatorial arena where Anakin fought is destroyed. Rex asks if that is enough, but Anakin says to keep firing. The explosions ignite a volcanic eruption on the moon, spraying lava across the surface. R2, who has been with Anakin the whole time, forgot to mention that, backs away from his master, sensing the darkness within him. Anakin tells Rex that he's going to the surface to wait for Obi-Wan, and that once again, he must protect the twins with his life. So yeah, no Mustafar in this version. I just thought that putting the final battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin on the moon where they met was a bit more thematically relevant and climactic, instead of just putting it on like a cool lava planet. That doesn't mean Mustafar doesn't exist in my version, it's just not here. It's off doing lava planet things. Obi-Wan and Owen's ships meet in the atmosphere of Karnak and dock together. Obi-Wan looks down at the destruction on the surface of the moon and knows that Anakin is waiting for him. He tells Owen that he's going to take the smaller ship and go to the surface to distract Skywalker while Owen goes and saves the twins. Owen asks Obi-Wan how he knows which cruiser the kids are on, and Obi-Wan says that he can sense them. On the surface, an officer radios Anakin and tells him that a ship has broken through the moon's atmosphere. Anakin tells them to let it through, and Obi-Wan's ship lands mere feet in front of him. Obi-Wan steps out of his vehicle and approaches the most dreaded moment of his entire life. At first, they just stand there, staring at each other. But after a while, Obi-Wan breaks the silence and says, "What happened? How did we get here? Padme is dead. Thousands of Jedi are dead. What happened? What could he have done to prevent this?" Anakin looks at him and says, "Nothing. There is nothing you could have done." Obi-Wan begs Anakin to rethink his choices. He can still come back from this. They can work together to take down Palpatine, and everything can go back to what it was. But even he doesn't believe it. He hasn't believed that since he saw Padme's body. Anakin says that there is no going back now, but if Obi-Wan surrenders, he could maybe convince the Emperor to spare him. This is a very genuine request from Anakin. He doesn't want to kill his best friend, but Kenobi refuses the offer and gawks at Anakin, calling Palpatine the Emperor. Anakin says that if he won't surrender, then he knows what must happen next. Anakin ignites his lightsaber and Obi-Wan does the same. They charge at each other with tears brimming in their eyes, and the battle to save the galaxy's soul begins. Just like most lightsaber battles in these rewrites, I'm not going to go through this point by point until the end at least, but suffice to say, this is a much more serious battle than the one that appeared in Revenge of the Sith. There's no jumping on droids, no swinging from ropes, no pointlessly spinning their lightsabers at each other without colliding. This is an emotional and intense battle. It's more akin to the final fight in Return of the Jedi or the final fight in the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus show. Now mind you, it's still acrobatic and epic, but it's kind of a fight that neither fighter wants to win. They're both kind of on the defensive, neither wanting to kill the other. The battle will be intercut with Owen sneaking onto the Imperial cruiser to save the twins, but I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to tell you all of that at once because it's easier. Owen sneaks onto the Imperial cruiser through a service shaft at the bottom of it. He wanders around for a while, but eventually finds R2-D2, who leads him to the twins. We always love a good amount of heroic rebellion from our droids. R2 uses some of his cool little gadgets to incapacitate the guards outside the room, and Owen sneaks in, but is met with Rex pointing a blaster at him. After a tense standoff, Rex lowers the blaster and tells Owen to take the twins. Owen is confused at first, but Rex explains that he can see where the galaxy is headed and he doesn't want any part in helping it get that way. He tells Owen to get off the ship as fast as he can because the only way they can convince Anakin to not go after the twins is if he thinks they're dead. Owen and R2 take the twins and make it to their ship and escape, while Rex goes to the engine room with a thermal detonator and destroys the cruiser. The explosion of the cruiser creates a pause between the battle of Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin looks up in disbelief as the debris falls to the ground. He turns to Kenobi with rage in his eyes and screams, "You killed them!" And at this moment, Obi-Wan realizes that Anakin has fallen so deep into the dark side that he can't even recognize his children's life, because Obi-Wan can tell that they're still alive. Anakin lunges at him, and the battle turns up a notch. Anakin is no longer playing defense. He wants to kill Obi-Wan more than anything in the world. Kenobi struggles to keep up with him and finds himself with his back against the wall. They battle onto a strip of land surrounded by lava. Anakin gets Obi-Wan on his back foot and presses his lightsaber into him while taunting that Obi-Wan is a failure and Qui-Gon would be so ashamed of him. Obi-Wan looks into Anakin's eyes and sees, finally, that his friend is gone. There is nothing of him left. He agrees with Anakin. He is a failure. He then uses the Force to pick up a ball of lava and throws it onto Anakin, giving him his signature burns. As Anakin reels back in extreme pain, Obi-Wan slices off his legs from the knee down. Anakin writhes in pain on the ground as Obi-Wan picks up his fallen friend's lightsaber. Holding back tears, he turns back and tells Anakin that he loved him, and that somewhere deep down, he always will. Anakin screams, "If you loved me, you would kill me." Obi-Wan responds, "That's the difference between you and me, Anakin. I don't kill the things I love." He walks away, tears flooding down his face, as Anakin screams out his name, almost like a child crying for their parent. Sometime later, Sidious finds Anakin much like he did in Revenge of the Sith. No lies, I'm gonna straight up copy the scene in Revenge of the Sith where Vader's rise is juxtaposed with Padme's death. It's easily one of the best scenes in the entire trilogy, if not the entire saga, and I'm just gonna keep it as is. The only major change is that Padme's funeral is being held on Alderaan instead of Naboo, but that's very minor. Also, Obi-Wan is in the shadows watching Padme's funeral. When Anakin first rises in the Vader suit, he asks Palpatine if his children are truly gone. Sidious asks him if he can feel them out there in the galaxy, and Vader says that he cannot. Sidious then says, "Then I'm afraid they are gone." In a rage, Anakin crushes everything in the room, including several droids and clones. In the wreckage, Sidious tells his apprentice that Anakin Skywalker is gone and that he must take a new name. The man once known as Anakin Skywalker mutters the word Vader and softly explains that it is the name of a folk hero on Karnak who would one day come and free them all from slavery. Palpatine smiles and says, "Then rise, Darth Vader." Once the funeral is over, Obi-Wan talks to Bail Organa about taking Leia. Bail isn't sure about it because he thinks it's too obvious, and also the Empire is sure to be keeping a close watch on him. Obi-Wan assures him that Anakin will not be able to find them, especially if they split them up. He thinks that the best place for Leia is on her mother's homeworld, where she can one day grow to make a difference. Bail sullenly agrees and takes the girl. Okay, quick little add-on because I totally forgot to add it into the script and the video and everything, so we're doing it now, which is fine. It seems like I have to do this every time, but, you know, it's not a habit. 3PO and R2 actually stay with Leia on Alderaan, and they report back to Obi-Wan, giving him updates and stuff like that. So that's why they're with her on the ship in A New Hope, and that's established somewhere around this scene. So there you go. That's where they are. As Obi-Wan leaves Alderaan, we get a montage of how the galaxy is changing. Sidious, now in full Emperor form, standing in front of a cheering galactic senate. Clones turning in their Republic armor for the classic Stormtrooper look. A young Tarkin looking down at the creation of the first true Star Destroyers. Yoda landing on Dagobah and accepting his exile. Finally, Vader in the ruins of Karnak, building his castle. A slight sadness has dripped into his posture as Padme's theme plays under the Imperial March. But he straightens as legions of stormtroopers stand in front of him at attention. They salute as he ignites his red lightsaber. Darth Vader has been born. But we end this film where it began, on Tatooine. Obi-Wan visits Luke, who is staying with Owen and the woman he's been shacking up with, Beru. Kenobi watches Luke as he sleeps, somehow knowing that this child will one day save the galaxy and undo all of their mistakes. Owen asks if it's really safe to be keeping Luke right under Vader's nose, but Obi-Wan responds that Anakin has fallen too far into the dark to see any light, and that's all there is in this home. To be careful, he plans on keeping his distance, but he will be there if he's needed. Our last scene is a silent one. Obi-Wan walks away from the Lars home but turns back to see the family staring up at the setting twin suns. Kenobi smiles and turns away from them. The last shot shows Obi-Wan looking towards us, away from the sun, as Beru, Owen, and Luke look towards them, into the future. And that is where we end Episode 3, Descent into Darkness, and the finale of our prequel trilogy. Ooh, boy, that was a lot. And if you made it all the way through with me, here is a very cute video as a treat and a thank you. So let's clear some things up before we end this shit. How does Vader not know Leia is alive in Episode 6? Answer: he does. He's fucking with Luke in that scene. The second he knew Luke was alive, he immediately assumed Leia was alive, so he knew about both of them. In that scene, he's still pretty evil, so it jives with his character that he would just fuck with Luke to mess with him. What was Palpatine's plan? Answer: he didn't really have one. I never liked the idea of villains with these massive grand plans that are so complicated and have so many facets to them, and Palpatine never really seemed like a character who would even have that. If you go back and watch his first appearance in Episode 6, he's very clearly going with the flow of the fight between Vader and Luke. Like, he kind of switches which one he's kind of rooting for as it goes, and I like that. So I like the idea of a Palpatine who is more going with the flow. He doesn't start the Clone Wars, but he does use them to consolidate power away from the Senate. He doesn't raise Anakin to be this ultimate apprentice. He recognized that he had a lot of power and was very angry, and at the time was starting to get annoyed with Maul, so he replaced him. Like, that's it. Nothing too big, nothing too scary. He's a smart guy, but he's not like mega super space Lex Luthor. How does this change Vader's redemption? Only minimally. The greatest tragedy of Anakin's life from his perspective has to do with abandonment. He was abandoned by Qui-Gon. He was abandoned by Shmi, even if it was to save his life. He was abandoned by Obi-Wan, and eventually he was abandoned by Padme. So the fact that Luke refuses to give up on him in that scene in Episode 6, the fact that he fully believes in him and refuses to kill him, means so much. And it also helps that at the time, coincidentally, Palpatine was abandoning him for his son. So that's what causes the turn. It's more connected. It's not just love for his son, it is also a culmination of everything he's been through in his entire life. It's also a bit more nuanced too, because he's kind of doing the same thing he did in the prequels, so he's still not that great of a dude, but he just happened to make the right decision. So yeah, no big changes, just contextual ones. So yeah, that is my prequel trilogy. I hope you guys liked some of the ideas I put forward here. I once again want to say I am in no way trying to invalidate all the work put into the original prequel trilogy. I think all those people did amazing jobs. I'm just trying to say what I think I would have liked to see on the screen. Let me know what you guys would like to see changed in my versions or the original versions, or just hurl insults at me, that's fine too. At this point, I'm probably so exhausted from editing this that it would feel good. I'm actually going to take a little break from making these Star Wars rewrites before I jump into the sequel trilogy. I've been doing this kind of non-stop since Dawn of Skywalker, which was in March. So that's a lot of months of working on these Star Wars rewrites. So I'm going to take a few months off before we jump into the sequel trilogy. I'm still going to put out videos. I have a lot of ideas I want to do, some new stuff, some fun stuff. I hope you guys like it and decide to check it out. I really do. I think they're going to be cool videos. But the sequel trilogy, honestly, like, if you liked my ideas for the prequel trilogy, fucking hold on, because the sequel trilogy is gonna be insane. I am so excited to dig in. And it's not like there's some ravenous group of fans who foam at the mouth and turn vicious at the name Rey, right? Right?